Hey everybody, welcome to episode 6 in the Smart Plus series. Today we're talking about teaching universal values, the growing importance of human values. And today we're going to focus specifically on one value, which probably is the value of all values. We're going to learn about that. We're going to learn about teaching values to students in school and the benefits of that, both to the students and the school, and I suppose as well to wider society. So let's kick off. Let's jump straight in today. My name's Graham Brown, by the way. Welcome back. If you've joined me in previous webinars, it's great to have you back. It's good to see you. It's good to see everybody here today. Well, I can feel your presence. You're here somewhere. So I'm going to ask you to say hello. So in the chat box below, there's a button there. You know what to do. If you've joined us from a previous webinar, this is what you've got to do. Just say hi in there. I'm sure there's going to be some familiar names. You get the bragging rights for getting the first comment in the chat box as well. So just say hi, where you're from. And if you've joined us from previous episodes, would love to know. That would be great to know. It'd be great to see some regulars in the chat box as well. So welcome back. Thanks for joining us on this webinar today. You know what I might actually do is I might actually ask some of you to speak up in a minute. You know how it works here. We'll do that after the poll. So hello from Tokyo. We've got another hello from Malaysia as well coming in. It's great to see. Often when we do these webinars, we have people from all over. So it's great to see people representing from different countries here. This is part 6 in the series. If you've missed any of them, this is what you can do. You can take your phone and you can scan this QR code in front of you. You've done this 100 times before going into the shopping mall. You just got to do it now, and you can get access to the School of the Future podcast. You get access to this series. You can get access to all of the previous series as well. Nothing will be missed. You can go back and review. There's been so much good content in these series that it's hard to remember it all. We're going to have some more today. Got some great guests coming up for you folks. Hello from Bangalore. Great to see you again. Good representation from India usually on these webinars. Great to see. We've got Michelle Dickinson from OWIS, One World International School in Singapore, the head of school there, and Dr. William Wan, the General Secretary for the Singapore Kindness Movement. I'm really looking forward to this. I think we're going to learn a few things, and maybe as well, we will challenge a few assumptions about things such as kindness, what it is and what it isn't as well, and what the benefits of it are for us as students, educators, and society in general. Just let's have a quick recap, if you may. Let's have a look at what we talked about before in the last episode. You can get this from the podcast as well. We had a great session with Amol and Kevin talking about how universities and schools are, I wouldn't say struggling, but how they're adapting to the digital era. And it's not, the tough part isn't necessarily the choice of technology, it's the choice of mindset. It's almost in a way what's happened to us in the last year is we've had the opportunity to hit the reset button and think, ask questions about what is school for? So that was a great episode. Before that, in episode 4, we had Hina and Ralph talking about beyond the grade. Dare I say it, there are reasons why we have education beyond getting grades. And that was a great session. We learned about what is it that a school should teach beyond simply passing exams. That was, if you can remember from that session, there was a great story there from Ralph talking about the case, not a case study, an anecdote, Johnny Ive from Apple, how little Johnny and his dad would walk around their hometown. I think it was somewhere like Newcastle in the UK. And his dad would show him different parts of the town and show him like designs in industrial warehouses and ask Johnny, like, why do you think it was like that? Johnny Ive went on to join Apple and design the iPhone and became the head of design for Apple globally. You know, it's those kind of touches that we need to learn, both as parents and educators, about really how do we train and educate students for the next generation. And then episode 3, we look at how sort of learning should go beyond formal education. We looked at ideas from from industry. We looked at quality management. We imported ideas from Toyota in production. Who are the stakeholders in education? And it wasn't just talking about parents and children, but wider society. And I think that nicely brings us to what we're going to talk about today, which is the subject of the matter, talking about values. What role does school education have in teaching values, and which values really should we be focused on? My esteemed panelists will be our guides today and help us understand really the answers to that question. But let me ask you first, we're going to ask the audience, as we normally do, to vote on the poll. And what's coming up here is a question about kindness. Now, kindness is the value we're going to focus on today. So I'm going to ask the engineer to launch the poll, and then I will ask you, the audience, to choose. I think you get 3 choices here. There's no correct answer here, by the way. There's not a catch. What does more kindness mean to school and society? This is in your opinion. So I'll read out some of the answers here. Less competition, better physical health, better mental health, better grades at school, happier environment, losing our edge. I'm sure these have all been said before, but I'm interested to know you, the audience, what do you think more kindness means to school and society? So you can choose 3, I believe, from that poll. And let's ask our guests, our experts, to chime in first. William, I think you are the most qualified to comment on this, seeing as you are the Secretary General of the Kindness Movement of Singapore. Firstly, why do we need a kindness movement in Singapore? Is Singapore unkind? What's going on, William?
Not at all, Graham. Thank you so much. Singapore is not unkind. Singapore, in fact, is pretty kind compared to many countries. And I think that many countries are also kind. I think the point is not about Singapore not being kind, but that we can be kinder and we can be more gracious. I think that's the point, because if we are not kind, we can never get started to be kind, because kindness must be innate in us in order to get started. If there is no chance of starting, forget it. But we already kind and we can be kinder.
Great to hear. Michelle, yourself, from that list, I don't think it's up at the moment. You'll have to do it from memory. What does kindness mean? Here we go. Okay, so interestingly, here are the results. I'd like you to comment on these. So what does more kindness mean to school and society? Number 1, happier environment. Interesting. 92% happier environment. 0% better grades at school. Come on, put us right, Michelle.
Well, it certainly does lead to a happier environment. It leads to an environment where children feel quite secure, are able to express their needs better in order to be good learners. So it's definitely about a happier environment, and it certainly, I think, leads to better physical health and better mental health, which I'm sure we'll explore today. In terms of not leading to better grades, I would disagree with that, because I think that if you are enabling and nurturing a whole community of happy learners, by their very nature, they are going to be enthusiastic learners, and therefore they're going to be motivated and intrinsically motivated to do well for themselves. And so actually what research suggests and what we see is that the happier the environment, which is created through kindness, actually the results, the academic results, are very good and are in line with that. So it's not detrimental in any way to academic success.
Does it in some way take fear out of learning? I wonder, like, if fear is a big part of kindness here as well. Is that the fact if you remove fear, people kind of flourish a bit more? What do you see from the actual students?
Absolutely. I think if you create and nurture an atmosphere of kindness, what tends to happen is that you also create an environment where mistakes and some sense of failing is acceptable. What happens then, because if you've got kind teachers and kind adults in your environment who use those opportunities really authentically in order to give positive feedback and make positive affirmations out of those mistakes, what that leads to, that modeling leads to other students being more accepting of those moments. And so essentially what it leads to is an atmosphere of support amongst students and less ridicule, in fact, and less bullying. And so there is a much more supportive, nurturing, collaborative environment where everybody wants to learn together and they want everybody to be successful together.
It's not a win-lose scenario.
Exactly.
In their minds. Well, that's great to hear. We're going to hear some examples of how that actually works in school as well. William, before we bring in some of the audience to speak up and tell us why they voted for their choices, what is kindness? I know it sounds like a silly question to ask, but what is it? Being nice, being soft? Help us define. Let's define kindness. Put it on the table for us.
I have a very simple definition, and that is simply to say that kindness is to be other-centered. Other-centeredness equals kindness. Just think about it. We talk about appreciation, we talk about support, we talk about lifting people up, we talk about being positive about things. It's always almost focusing on others. If I'm compassionate, it's about others. If I'm appreciative, it's about others. If I'm grateful, it's about others. And these are all values within this big thing you call kindness that you started off. The mother of all values.
Oh, absolutely. Is it being nice to people as well? I mean, because sometimes being nice can, if you're the nice guy, sometimes that has ramifications, doesn't it? Like you could be
in Singapore, Graham. In Singapore, fortunately or unfortunately, good or bad, I'm known as the kindness man, the kindness guy. And I sat on a number of committees and boards, and two of them appointed me to be on the disciplinary committee. How is that? How is that they would appoint a kindness person to be on the disciplinary committee? I'll tell you a story. I was on NKF board, and this is a story that is broken in the press, so I can share it with you. NKF is one of Singapore's largest charity. I mean, we raise millions of dollars for people with kidney problems, dialysis, and so on. Without NKF, many people who cannot afford dialysis would really be in trouble. And so we are very thankful for many donors. We had a big episode many years ago, and that caused the giving to NKF drop by 70%. And at the time when this new thing happened, it didn't get up back to 100%. And then something happened. Our CEO got into trouble with some inappropriate behavior. And I was appointed to chair the disciplinary committee to make a decision what to do with it. And very quickly, we came to the conclusion that we had to let him go. And we called a press conference. He admitted to everything. There was no legal suit of any kind. He was willing to concede that he's made a big mistake. We let him go publicly. Now, kindness is not weakness. Being nice doesn't mean that I'm going to lay down and you can roll over me and make all the illegal actions and do all the wrong things. And then because I'm kind, I smile at you and say, well, it's okay. I'm kind to you, so that's fine. Let's move on. No, we still need to deal with the problems. And we need to be making difficult decisions, and we need to have the courage to make difficult decisions, including letting someone who has been very good as a CEO go because he's done something that he cannot stay.
But when you make those decisions, how do you do it with that other-centeredness as well?
Well, there are three things. Number one, I'm a lawyer, so due process is very important. We must not just go ahead and just run him roughshod and say you're out. We're not going to listen to you. No, we give him an opportunity to defend himself and to speak for himself. A due process is very important. So that's number one. Number two, when we came to a conclusion and he agreed that was the right conclusion, he signed on it. And we understood then that, there's not going to be a fight back. And then thirdly, we said to him, after this, when it's all done, I, as a chairman, would do everything I can, or the chairman of this committee, together with the board, we will do everything we can to help you to deal with the fallout of this issue in your life. Because we are not here to destroy you. We are here to do what is right for the organization, and then to restore you where we can help you.
Great to hear. You don't throw them under the bus, so to speak. Okay, that's really good. I think the first lesson here is that kindness isn't weakness. So I think that's important, because we're going to look at that in schools as well and think about how that sort of translates into the environment we create in schools. And let's talk to the audience now and see what their thoughts are. So we do have an audience here who voted on the poll. Can we get the poll results back up, please, engineer? We can remind ourselves what people thought kindness or more kindness meant. There we go. So this is what I want you to do. If you voted for a happier environment, put your hands up. There's a hands up button on the panel in front of you. You put your hands up there. There you go. A few hands going up now. Few people are shy. It's just like being back at school. Put your hands up. All right. This is what I want you to do is, if you put your hands up and you have a webcam and a microphone and you want to jump on and tell us a little bit about your thoughts about kindness. Doesn't matter if you're a student, one of the students at the school, or you're a teacher, or anywhere in between. We'd love to hear from you. Keep your hands up. And then what I'm going to ask is my engineer to put the spotlight on you. So you keep your hands up if you're ready to join the webinar, and you'll be asked a few questions, about 30 seconds of limelight on you. Okay, so we've got Erum Saftar. Let's get Erum on, or did you convert the other one? But we'll get one up here, engineer, on the screen, and maybe get them to talk. Can we do that? Okay, so I think just as they're adding them now, just as they're patching them in, let's talk about maybe what the key question is that, I wonder if here they come. They're joining us now. I want to ask, have we forgotten to be kind? So maybe I can ask Erum this. So Erum, hello. Thank you for joining us, Erum. Can you hear us there okay? Hello, Erum, come in. Erum. Oh, well, there you go. You half made it to fame there. Oh, there you go. Do we have Erum speaking? Hello, Erum.
Yeah, hello. Can you hear me?
I can hear you loud and clear. Erum, where are you calling in from? Which part of the world?
Yes, I am living in Malaysia.
Excellent. Which part of Malaysia are you in?
I am living in Kuala Lumpur.
Kuala Lumpur, fantastic. And do you have children at the school? Are you a teacher? What's your connection to the schools here today?
Yes, I'm working in Kuala Lumpur and I have 2 children.
Excellent. And what ages are your children, can I ask?
Yes, I have an intention to get admission in Global International Indian School. And my first child is studying in O levels, and I have intention to get admission for my second child. He is 13 years old, and the first one is 15 years old.
So you got 2 boys, 2 years apart.
Yes.
Excellent. That's just like me and my brother. I imagine that can be a bit of a handful from time to time.
Yes.
Okay. So tell us about kindness. Do you think that your boys, you've seen them behave. Like boys with boys, are they naturally kind to each other? I mean, what do you see in the environments in which they operate in? What do you think about the natural position of kindness for people of that age?
Yeah, I think as a mother, I would like to mention few points regarding the environment. Because I am nurturing my children, I try to do best for my children, to do good nurture for them. So I try best to keep myself positive in front of them. And exactly the environment is most important for their education, for their future values, and as well as for their daily learning activities. This is the reason that I chose the environment option first, not only for the present circumstances, but for the future for my family. It's very important to keep the environment peaceful and positive.
Yeah, these are great points, Aram. Michelle, yourself, you must see this all the time. It's challenging, isn't it? Keeping environments peaceful and positive when there's the pressure of work and exams. And how do you manage all of that? And how do you, not let that, or are you obviously stressed in front of children? Is that okay? Or do you have to hide that and retain this veneer of positivity and kindness all the time? How do you manage that?
Well,
sorry. Yeah.
Michelle. So I'm asking Michelle. Thank you very much, Aram. Thank you for your points.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think Graham, it just goes back to, for me, what that lady was saying, and also it just goes back to kind leadership and modeling what kind leadership looks like. And equally as to what Dr. Wan said, kind leadership is about being considered, actually, and it's about being objective. And it's about dealing with difficult decisions and not running away from them, but actually dealing with them with compassion and a certain sense of understanding that sometimes your leadership puts other people in a difficult place. And I think if you look at a school as a whole, what we have to understand is that all teachers are leaders. Yes. And so what we really want is for those teachers to also be kind leaders. And because they're actually leading the students in their classrooms and in their lessons. And so equally for the teachers, it doesn't mean that they're soft either. It means that they are enabling an environment of learning, which means it needs to have some essential agreements built around that based on kindness. And it also means that they are using positive means and strategies for discipline in order to keep all students engaged. And therefore, if you enable that in your environments, and therefore you enable appropriate choices and therefore what people would consider good behavior in schools, I think then there is no reason for the adults in the environment to be stressed and to show that this is, go around showing that they're in a stressed place.
Kindness starts at the top, does it?
I think it starts at the top. I am a firm believer as well in that kindness breeds kindness. So, if you are a kind leader and you treat the people who work for you with kindness, especially in a school, then those people are also going to model that kindness to the students. And that's the reason why we're all here, to ensure that those students achieve the very best possible results for themselves.
Okay, we'll talk about results in a minute coming up. I'm sure everybody here agrees with the ideology of kindness and why it's a good thing. It can't be a bad thing. Yet, let's put the shoe on the other foot a little bit here. And if we can just have a look at some of the slides here, some articles that come out, we can just jump through. Have we forgotten to be kind? Somebody's written an article in The Observer recently saying, is kindness extinct? And have we really forgotten what it is to be kind? Why do we need to teach people to be kind? Surely this is in our nature. This is like teaching people to, follow the laws or, to behave in a moral way. We've been taught moral lessons and kindness since we could toddle, since we could walk. So why is there such a focus on it now, especially in school, when there are the pressures of teaching them reading, writing, and arithmetic and all these academic subjects? Why do we need kindness? Look at the next slide. This is kind of an interesting data point here. We have William himself from a recent survey of Singaporeans saying that young people are too embarrassed to show kindness in public. William, tell us a little bit about the backstory to this poll and maybe any sort of surprises that came out of it for you.
We do an annual poll, and we call it the Graciousness Survey, partly to help us to be relevant and engaged so that we know exactly what people are thinking and where the gaps are, and we can go forward year on year to do and to message in a way that's appropriate and that's effective. Now, one year we found that young people were saying that they were too embarrassed to show kindness. Now, and then we thought about it, we consulted psychologists and so on, and we came to understand that at a certain stage in the young person's life, it's very natural for them not to want to be standing out. So if you're on a bus, for example, and everybody's there, and there's this pregnant lady, who needs a seat, and nobody's giving up the seat, for example, or everybody's waiting for somebody to do it, and you're always thinking as a young person, if I give it up, if she doesn't take the seat, what would people think of me? Would they think that I'm just being, too smart for my own good, or too kind for my own good, or I'm just being stupid, giving up seat when people don't need it, and so on. So we then came out with a campaign to say that when you are thinking of being kind, just do it. Just do it. Don't think too much. Because when you do it, you'll find that people will appreciate you for doing it. And others will follow you for doing it. So go and start and show and share kindness rather than thinking too much about it and getting too worried about what people think about you. So that doesn't mean, as they think about it and being embarrassed, that doesn't mean that they do not want to be kind. They are just worried about what people think of them, because that's the way they are at that stage in their life. They are worried about what people think of them more than anything else. So we're trying to.
It's not a lack of kindness. How do you think that would compare to if we were to do that poll 20 years ago or 40 years ago? Do you think it would have a different result?
Well, we are all teenagers once. When we were teenagers, how did we feel about being different? No, we are all trying to be like everybody else. We want to be included. We want to be accepted by everybody else. Sure. And there will always be some exceptional people who would stand out and want to be different, but most of us, we just want to be like everybody else. So that hasn't changed very much, I don't think.
Yeah. One of the things you mentioned earlier, William, it stuck out for me is courage.
Yeah.
I think it's courage and kindness almost go hand in hand in many ways. Yeah. Courage, you're talking about courage to make the decisions that you made, courage to stand up and offer your seat to somebody, and to be the first, isn't it? And courage comes with a fear of rejection, I suppose, or fear of standing out.
Yes.
And it's interesting, even that word, I was thinking about it as you said it, like courage, the word comes from the Latin word for heart. That core, or it's like in Spanish, for example, it's corazon, for example. Yeah. So it's like,
or in French, it's also heart.
Yeah, exactly. So, how important that is. It's from the heart to make these decisions. Michelle, I want to ask you, I'm going to jump a little bit backwards and forwards on the slides here and ask my engineer just to follow on, and we'll sort of go backwards and forwards to follow the narrative here. I want to talk about kindness and then social media as well, because I'm sure this must really impact your students. So if we can zip along a little bit and jump, let's go. Yeah, there we go. So no, back a couple. There we go. Yeah, kindness and social media, because William's talking here about how young people don't want to stand out and they will absorb the behaviors of other people as the norm. And social media, for better or for worse, pretty much amplifies that. TikTok, which is, popular, the app, I suppose, for teens today, has announced new rules to promote kindness on the app. Do you see challenges with social media and kindness? How do you see that manifest in schools? Not your school necessarily, but all schools. And then how do you create an environment where you can promote the better behaviors?
Well, I think that young people nowadays, on social media, they are inundated with new platforms all the time that they are trying to navigate, and they're also trying to navigate a brand new way of socializing, if you like. So, and it's a way of socializing that they have access to 24 hours a day. And so it will lead to mistakes happening. It will lead to some students posting messages that they then later regret or they want to be able to remove. And I think, for schools, what the important part is to make sure that when you're looking at digital citizenship and you're looking at how to use social media appropriately, that you very much not only build that in through your curriculum, but you build it in through the culture of your school. so that, you know, if you're teaching students how to speak to each other and be respectful to each other and to be tolerant of each other and to understand different perspectives, then what you want to see happening through digital citizenship teaching and learning is that this will come through into social media as well. And social media inevitably will become a kinder place to be. It's still, you know, it's still a relatively new place. And for me, I am delighted that I can see much more social media groups now, as probably their first rule for joining forums is that everybody needs to be kind. And, you know, it's interesting because just going back a little bit about children do have an intrinsic sense of what kindness is. Yes, they do understand what it feels like when somebody is kind to them. Yes, they can internalize that very quickly. But kindness is active. You know, it has to also be taught. It doesn't happen by itself. Yes, we have to also be teaching children what kind words are like. What does kindness sound like? Yes, what words will I be using if I am being kind? What does kindness feel like, and what does kindness look like? You know, when you look at the subtleties of bullying that can take place, some of that is about looks across a classroom. It's nothing spoken. And so what does kindness look like? And then teaching children, showing that kindness, and how can you do that? And so I think it's a very active thing that you are constantly bringing attention to and reiterating and deepening and embedding. And I think if you can get that right across, then, and you have kind communication, it can only lead to a better place in terms of communication on social media.
Where does it go wrong then in terms of kindness? That if children by their nature are kind, and human nature, I mean, anybody here, you deal with students, families all the time, and William as well, like multiple different areas of society, different backgrounds. And, you know, I think we come to the conclusion that people are of different stripes, but by default kind in nature. That's our general nature. So where does it go wrong with children's development, that they start off kind, and then what happens? Why do they sort of forget it? Why do they, is it, for example, the system we put them into, or what we expect out of traditional schooling? At what point do they sort of go off the path of being naturally kind?
May I?
Yeah, sure.
Graham, I'm not sure. I don't think I said that we are naturally kind. I said we are innately kind. I think there's a difference. In other words, there is a part of us that is truly kind, and that if we unlock it, the kindness will come out of it. But there is also a base part of us that can get angry, revengeful, bitter, and resentful, and they can start very young too. I mean, it's also there. So I think it's a matter of, it's like an old story told by one of the, it's a what we call in America a Red Indian story. I mean, a native Indian chief telling the story. There are two dogs in me, in my heart, and one is a fierce dog, and one is a gentle dog. And depending on which dog I feed, that dog becomes powerful in me. So there are two sides of us. I mean, that's why we have poets and people who can wax eloquent about all the beauty of life, the painters, the artists, the musicians. And at the same time, that same person may at certain times also reveal the other side of the character. Can be very unpleasant, very unkind, and very rough, and so on. So there are two sides of us. And I'm saying the innate side is that kindness side that we need to, grow a bit more, unlock and nurture, encourage. When my daughter was about a year old, maybe a year and a half, and she could sit on a high chair and a child's chair and eat with us, we were on the ship to India, and we were at the captain's table. You know how the captain's table are like in the ship. They are
Mm-hmm.
all dressed up nicely, nice, tablecloth and everything else. And my daughter, who was 1.5, thereabout, didn't like the food. You know what she did? I want to tell you, assure you, both of you, Michelle and Graham, we didn't teach her that. And in our life, we have not exemplified that. We have not shown her that we can do that. She took the plate of the thing that she didn't like, she put it on the hand, and then she just smashed it on the table upside down.
Yeah.
What an embarrassment it was. But that's a 1.5-year-old kid.
Mm.
And then we say, oh, look at the kids, it's so chubby and so beautiful and so nice. That's one side of it. And then there's the other side.
Lovely. It's a great story.
Can I just say as well, what's really interesting to me is if, the more reading you do about this, as humans, we kind of tend to react and respond from two key places, two core positions. And that is either a position of love and security, yes, and all of the positive emotions that come with that, or we operate from a place of fear. So something is making us feel insecure. And what comes with that is all of the more negative emotions that we experience, like anger and irritation and frustration and upset and sadness. And I think, children are just young human beings, and they're learning to find their place in the world, and they're learning how to deal with different situations. The most important thing for us as adults, whether we're teachers or any adults in a child's life, really, for me, is that we need to operate from a place of love all the time, even when they're operating from a place of fear. So if we do that and we model that, we teach them how to respond from a place of love, and we teach them to respond from a place of kindness, a place of happiness, a place of appreciation, a place of respect and tolerance. And, when I look at children, they make mistakes. I have parents who come to me and and say, I'm so sorry. I can't believe my child did that. And my instant reaction to that is, well, your child is a child. Yes. They're 8 years old, or they're 3 years old, or they're 14 years old, and they've only been on this earth for that amount of years. And, there are, and learning is challenging, and learning is hard work, day after day, hour after hour, minute after minute. We expect them to start learning from 8:30 in the morning, and they have to keep going until 3:30. And some of those things that they're learning, they find personally really challenging and scary. You've got the child who finds maths very difficult. You've got another child who finds spelling challenging, and they can be in a place of fear. And therefore they make mistakes. And sometimes they come out with something that's unkind to the person sitting next to them who can do this better than they can right now. But if we respond from a place of understanding and give them the language to express themselves and to say, I'm in quite a difficult place right now. I don't know what to do, then we are allowing them to grow up to be kind people of the future and kind leaders of the future.
Absolutely. I like the point about equipping them with language. That gives them choices, doesn't it? Rather than, I like this idea. You've got the two dogs, the two inside, the two potential routes that you can take in terms of either acting from a place of love or fear, which are really the two prime motives. That obviously fear has kept us alive as a species for millions of years, right? I'm just noting some of the comments as well. I'll read those out in a minute, which are sort of commenting about what we're talking about. So I'll voice those shortly. I remember myself with my son, so he must have been, now he's 15. So, but in his sort of early days when he'd be running around the kitchen, knocking things over, I remember him picking up a jar of mayonnaise, the stuff that, if you break it, it goes everywhere, and just dropping it on the floor. Mistake, he was just playing around with it. And I think I caught myself in that moment with that choice, maybe because I was paying attention to kindness or similarly mindfulness in those weeks beforehand. And I thought, I can either lose my rag and shout at him, like, you idiot, Or I could say, oh dear, we're going to have to clean that up. And you think about what that teaches a child in how you react to something. Because if you scold somebody, and you know, we've all had that at school, and I certainly had that at my school when I was a kid, that teaches people fear, doesn't it? That you do something wrong, it's fear. So you hide, and then you can't be kind. You don't operate out of a position of love. Which makes things very different in terms of the reactions. And it sort of comes back as well. Ultimately, you talk both about leadership, teachers as leaders, and William, yourself as a leader within society as well. It's all about example, isn't it? I heard one of the greatest examples of, somebody saying how to teach your kid, saying there's 3 rules of parenting: example, example, example. And even in those small reactions to mistakes, how that teaches people about kindness in good ways and bad ways. Right, I'm going to read some of the comments coming through here. Let's pick some of these out. So Anita is commenting about bullying. So we talked about that. And I think this is carrying on from what William and Michelle both said about how we react. So children fall prey to bullies who try to get attention by provoking them, calling them names and so on. It's hard then to operate out of a position of kindness in that situation. She says children need to be trained, put under some kind of emotional pressure, I guess. They got to face criticisms. Enter the real world, ultimately, where not everybody is going to be kind and operate out of a position of love. How do you deal with that? They're saying, oh, that's very good, maybe, but when my child goes out there, they're going to face the ravages of the wild, where not everybody is, as we talk about here. How do we deal with that? Who wants to go first? What's the reality? How do we train children in that situation?
Well, I mean, my point of view on this is that the world is an ever-changing place. Okay, and some people may have experienced unkindness in their lives, and therefore they may think that their child will also experience unkindness. But for me, I just think, it's forever changing, and we have to be in schools. We've got the next generation of people going out into society, and if we can prepare them in how to respond to this, okay, how to have some kind of empathy for somebody who may be saying something unkind to us, right? We're not ever going to stop everybody experiencing an unkindness in their life. But if we can help children to understand how to respond to it and how to be empathetic and not to take it personally on board, and to have some kind of understanding that that person must be in a bad place right now to say this, then I think we're setting up children to grow up to be much more centered, much more considered people about not taking this on at a personal level. Because when we take things at a personal level, that's when we become very hurt. That's when, the bullying becomes internalized, if you like, if someone is unkind to us. So I think, you're never going to take away every aspect of unkindness. We're also never going to take away the fact that all people have to face disappointment. We all have to face disappointment, It's just because you're a kind person doesn't mean you're definitely going to get into the job that you want just when you want it. But hopefully what it does is it allows you to be the kind of person who can reflect on maybe why you didn't get that then, and not to make it a negative thing, to be open-minded about it, and to think, okay, well, I will just take this experience and I will move on with it, and it will make me better.
Okay, great. I'm going to read out some of the other comments coming in a minute. Maybe we can jump in and have a look at some of the last slides here, and then we'll give the audience an opportunity to ask questions as well. I want to talk about kindness and competitiveness. If we can just jump back a little bit here. We go back a couple here. Let's go back. There's one more. There we go. Versus competitiveness. Is there a payoff here? I'm curious to know, I'm thinking, well, if I'm kind, I'm going to lose my edge here. So I don't necessarily want my child to be that kind. I want him to be a winner. He's got to go and get the job. He's got to go and ace the interview and beat the other guys who are not going to be so kind. So he needs to have that competitive edge. He needs to have that hunger. He needs to live in the real world. Again, that's coming up. Is there a payoff here between kindness and competitive? Let's have a look at some of the data first here. Obviously, we're in Singapore, which is, if we have a look at the data, the most competitive economy in the world. Next slide. We can have a look at that, or maybe it's not coming up. And then maybe some people say there's a problem with being too nice. These are some of the business articles coming out here. William, is there a payoff between kindness and competitiveness? Is there, you know, some kind of mutual exclusivity here? Because this is going to be on the minds of parents. I want my kid to be competitive. I want him or her to win, because that's important. They've got to get good grades. Even if I don't believe in the system, they still have to get good grades. What do you think? Is that
it may surprise you, Graham, if I would tell you that I'm a very competitive person. I really am. I have worked very hard to improve myself. I have started many years ago with very little. I didn't come from a wealthy family. I wanted to succeed. I worked very hard at it. I'm very competitive. And people who play Scrabble with me will know that I'm very competitive. And then I learned along the way that I can still succeed, be competitive, but not be unkind to people I'm competing with. Because in the end, I realized that I'm not really competing with anybody. I'm competing with myself. In other words, if I want to be better myself, I've got to work very hard and I got to push myself, but not at the expense of others. Yeah. And then at the same time, I realized that, in fact, if I am able to succeed and help others to succeed together with me, then when I reach the place of success with people that I have worked together to succeed, it's a better world. It's a better place to be than to be successful alone without your friends being with you. Now, with all that, I changed my perspective. I still am competitive, but like playing golf, I enjoy all my friends playing with me, and they can compete against themselves. If they want to compete with me, that's up to them. But I am determined not to compete with them. I want to compete with myself. And then if I can help them, if they allow me, I will help them. So I want them to get to where I am if they are not as good a player as I am. But I'm not going to put them down and just be the best for myself alone, you see. And then when I do that, I find that I'm enjoying the game better, much better. So in real life, I think it's the same. That if I am CEO and I was CEO, and if I were practicing law and I was practicing law, I didn't have to go into court. I was a trial lawyer. I didn't have to go to court, even though we are in an adversarial situation, adversarial system. I don't have to be so nasty to my opponent, to my learned counsel. I can still be helpful, I can still be polite, I can still be gracious, but I would do my best to take care of the interests of my client to the best of my ability without having to be nasty to the opponent. Can I do that and succeed? The answer is I have done that. And then when we succeed, we go to the bar room and have a drink, and we are still the best of friends. We have not offended each other. It's been nothing personal. And they will respect me for working very hard for my client, and I respect them for working very hard for their client. And I understand and respect why they have to keep certain things from me, because that's a professional duty, and I'm not upset with them for that, and they respect me for the same thing. I think that's the way we should do it. Be friends and be friendly competitors, in other words. And then most of all, compete with yourself most, not with someone else.
Was that a learned strategy, or was that your default? Did you, as a younger man?
By nature, I'm competitive, so I have to learn. I have to learn to be, and even today, I'm still having trouble not being competitive playing Scrabble.
Right. Okay. But as a younger man, when you were in the courtroom, you were competitive because that was the nature of the business.
Yes.
And you were probably surrounded by people who probably didn't have that default position of kindness as well, I'm sure.
Yes.
That would have been encouraged in many ways, right?
Yes.
So it would have been absorbed easily.
Yes, but then even in practice, as I grew in my practice, I learned how to be kind even as a trial lawyer, you know, and do the right thing, you know, because, and then I remember that I am an officer of the court. That's my first responsibility. Although my responsibility is to my client because my client pays me, but my first duty is to the state, as an officer of the court, to ensure that justice is done. That's my responsibility.
Was there ever a time when your beliefs in that, and particularly kindness, in some ways, not compromised, but relationships that people may have said, you know, that wasn't the right way of doing it? Because I think it, especially, and I'm bringing this back to what we're talking about with teenagers as well, they get it that they have to be kind, yet what tends to be the case that it's peer pressure.
Yes.
And therefore, oh, you know, why are you always doing that thing? Or why are you not part of the crowd and doing it like us? And yeah, that's kids in school, but that's no different to how adults behave in business, right? Was there ever a time for you when you had to kind of like, you came to a point and you said, actually, no, I'm going to have to make a conscious decision here where I'm going to go with what I believe, and that's being kind. And that may in some way have said no to people.
Of course, now I am in my mid-70s, right? I mean, I was much younger, and you start somewhere and you start learning and you start to realize that that is not as good as this, and then you make decisions and you grow, right? I would be lying to say that I am why I am from the day I was born. Not at all. I mean, I had been nasty. I had been a difficult lawyer. I'm quite sure that some of my learned opponents or learned counsels and so on, of course. And then as I mature, as I grew older, I realized that there's a better way of doing things. And I'm today a champion of kindness because I'm absolutely convinced that if any lawyer today would learn to be a kind lawyer, you will still succeed, and even succeed better than if you're an unkind lawyer.
That's great words to round up on. But before we do that, Michelle, I'm curious, if you were to cast your gaze into the future and look at what would society be like if every school taught kindness like you, how would society change? Would there be a substantial change, significant change? Or, you know, would it be tangible, or would it just be slightly better?
I think if everybody came out of education having a core set of values, you know, core terminology around what it means to be kind, you know, the key characteristics of what that looks like and the attributes of what that looks like, and being able to use those moving forward into their lives, I think it would have a significant change. There would be significant change. I mean, if you look across the world at the moment, I think what's really interesting to me is the power of kindness and how the kindness is spreading, not just in terms of schooling, but also in terms of governments. Yes, we've now got politicians who talk about being kind politicians, kind leaders of countries. And, you know, the kindness movement itself is gathering pace across the world. And so I think there is a real view to the future, and understanding actually that all young people now are facing a very unknown future as well. You know, there's such a rapid change of society in terms of globalization, about wanting to be global citizens. And that means a real deep understanding of other people's perspectives and their heritage and their religions, and what all of that brings to them as a person, and how that influences their opinions and their suggestions. And in a society where we're all going to be, you know, these students, this next generation, are going to be real global citizens of the future. And they're going to be working together and moving, and have to have adaptability and flexibility to go into professions that haven't even been created yet. You know, as educators, we're probably in the first time where we're not really sure what we're educating these children for. Yeah? We're not educating them for industry anymore. You know, we're not, or ultimately, we don't really know. Everything is so fast paced. So what we want to be able to do is enable these people to grow up to be able to live in this world and to be able to partake in it and be part of multinational companies, come out with good skills and good attributes, but also good results and, you know, good academic excellence as well as character excellence. And I think if we can achieve that together, we're going to be in a good place for the future.
Thank you very much. I'm going to tell you how you can get access to the whole series on YouTube if you want to watch the videos coming up in a minute. We're going to share a QR code with you, so get your phones ready, folks. But before we do that, I'm just going to read a couple of the comments if we can. There was one nice comment there. I've just lost it now because we're on full screen. But it said, I think it was from Rajiv. There you go. Thank you very much. Rajiv said, yeah, I'm just going to paraphrase a little bit. Oh, kindness is like snow. It beautifies everything it covers. We don't have a lot of snow here in Singapore, but it's very welcome. Thank you very much for your comments. Some great comments in there today. Thank you for participation with all the attendees. You're voting as well. Here comes the QR code, folks. A couple of things you can do. Next step. Are you ready? So here we go. So the first one is you can subscribe. You can get access to all the 6 episodes on YouTube. If you're a YouTube buff, then you can just get your phone ready and scan the next slide. There you go. There's also a link in the chat box as well. If you can't or you would prefer to, just do it in the old-fashioned way with a link. There you go. There is the link to GIIS Smart Campus videos. It's all there. And coming up as well, another link for you to gather about the Global Schools Foundation. And really, I think you can find out a lot about a bit more of the backstory of this webinar and this series as well. So you can scan that and you get all the information that you need, plus any contacts that you may need to follow up on. Hey, folks, great webinar today. Thank you very much to Michelle and William. Really enjoyed the conversation. I think it was very enlightening as well. And hopefully, you know, it's not just one webinar. It's a flourishing, I think, in society, isn't it? People are realizing, and kindness is manifesting in many, many different ways. People talking about diversity, inclusion. These are all really sort of manifestations of kindness, aren't they, in different aspects of society. So it's great to see. Thank you very much to the attendees today. And thank you for your input and those that joined on the video as well. Appreciate that for helping us out on the webinar. Michelle and William, wonderful. Have a wonderful afternoon yourselves. Thank you for joining us. Goodbye to everybody here today. Thank you for joining us for this 6-part webinar series as well. So if you missed anything, go back to YouTube or the podcast and you can get everything there. Okay, folks. Yeah.
Thank you very much. And thank you, Michelle. And thank you, everyone, for joining us. Have a great day.
Excellent.
Thank you both. And thank you, everybody. Lovely opportunity. Thank you so much.
Wonderful. All right, folks, we're signing out here. Stay healthy, be kind. We'll see you all anon. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.